OMG's, boys, girls, in-betweeners, welcome back to the second episode of the new Lab Partners, and we're here to talk about throws. Namely, what throws are, why they're important, and why there may be more to throws than you actually think. So, to talk about Juri's throws, Juri has 3 throws. She does not have any command throws, she is not a command throw character, but she does have 3 throws. She has her regular throw, obviously. She has a back throw. And she has an air throw. Now, before we get any further, this is something that I always need to talk about, is that if you're one of the people who believes that throws are something that are cheap and should not be done, that is not correct. The whole throws are cheap is something that was born from the early days of arcade fighting, where basically people would turtle a lot and believe that being thrown while they were trying to defend was not a legitimate strategy. That's not really true anymore. Fighting games have evolved an awful lot since then, and frankly, if you get thrown, it's really your own fault. So don't worry about that. Do not think you are being cheap. No one in their right mind who actually knows a thing or two about this game will ever consider you cheap for doing so. So don't worry about that. Throw to your heart's content. But let's talk about what throws actually do. Now, you can look at this on the surface level and say, well, throw's a good tool. Does 120 damage, that's decent, that's solid, and it knocks them down, so it gives me a little bit of pressure, and that's kind of it. And on the surface, you would be right, they do seem to just do that and not much else, and as a result, people don't go for throws particularly often because going for damage is much more rewarding. Why go for a throw for 120 damage when you can do something that's going to get you a lot more damage, like a basic combo? Yeah, we've got almost double damage right there. So that's the thing to really consider, is that why would you ever go for a throw? And the answer goes back to what I was talking about throws being cheap. Why don't people like being thrown? Because being thrown is not just about getting damage when you think about it in terms of the meta. Being thrown is a tool to make your opponent stop blocking. That's what you really want to achieve with a throw. You're not trying to throw them just to get damage. The damage is nice, don't get me wrong. But when you throw someone enough times, what are they going to do? They're either going to attack the throw because they're sick of being thrown, or they're going to press a button and try to interrupt your throw. And that should be your goal, because once your opponent is going to press buttons, that means that a person who was previously just going to block and just take a throw, or just try and block and just try and absorb all your assault, is now going to be open to being attacked and being damaged where they weren't before. So before we get into what you can do regarding the meta and the mind games of throws, let's look at your options off most normal throws. Now, if we go for a forward throw, Juri has a few different options off of that, if they do a quick rise. From forward throw, you can just do a stand HK. If they press a button, you'll get a crush counter and you can get a follow-up off of that. It's -4, but you will land at a distance which will be relatively difficult for most characters to be able to punish, so for the most part it's safe, but the downside being if they block it, then at that point neutral is basically reset and you're back to square one in terms of being able to apply pressure. Other options include going for a light DP. Again, same problem. If they press a button or they try to throw again, they get knocked out for it, but light DP doesn't even give you a knockdown, it just gives you 2 hits and that's kind of it. After that, neutral resets, and you're back to square one if you're looking to apply pressure. The third option, which I like a little bit more, but has a little bit more technicality to it, is you need to walk up and do a micro walk, which is a very small walk, and follow up with a crouching medium into your fireball of choice. Let's say crouching heavy kick, heavy fireball I should say. Like so. It is a waste of resources if they actually block the fireball. However, if they don't block the fireball, which most people won't at that range, you'll have a knockdown and more follow-up options to go from there. So while you are spending resources, they are resources that are usually spent fairly well. In terms of the back throw, Juri really only has one solid follow-up option, which is the stand heavy kick. Stand heavy kick will catch any button that they press if they try to wake up. Now, keep in mind that most people, when they're thrown so far from Juri, it does appear to be quite a distance that they're thrown. They believe that they're usually going to be safe at that distance, so if they try to press a button or try to move in afterwards, after being thrown, they will be caught by the stand heavy kick and will most likely get crush counted for it. Now, that said, if you do it enough times, you will condition your opponent into just waking up and blocking, which is a smart thing to do on their part, in which case you can then apply pressure because they're waiting for a kick that never comes. So you can dash up, throw, or go for some other follow-up options like your crouching medium into your fireball of choice. Now when we talk about throws, we talk about mind games, and that's what you really want to do. You want to make them afraid to block, essentially. You want to get them pressing buttons, or you want to get them teching. So in that case, throws are the best way to do that, and the best way to implement your throws is to frustrate your opponent with them. A good way to do this is to do multiple throws in a row. Now even though throw loops were removed in Season 3, there are no throw loops left in this game, you can still do throw loops if your opponent is prepared to sit there and just block on wake up. You can throw them over and over again. There are times we can throw people 3, 4, 5 times in a row just because they're prepared to wake up and block, and if your opponent is that kind of person who wants to just wake up and block, it's a really good tool for just frustrating them, because eventually they will be forced to press a button. No one can take throws forever, in which case you need to be ready with your confirm of choice. So you might go for a throw, you might go for a throw, and then third time you might walk up and do something else. This is the high level mind game mix-up that you need to play with your opponent and get them off balance, because if they can't guess your rhythm for throws and when you're going to go for me's, then that is exactly where you want them to be. Now the last thing you can do with the throw mix-up is to do what's known as the famous shimmy. Now a shimmy is where you suspect your opponent is going to either press a button on wake up after a throw or a knockdown, it can be off either, and either go for a throw tech, which is ideal, or potentially press a button, which is less ideal, but still pretty good. So in this case, we've got Cammy doing a throw on wake up whenever she gets knocked down. Now in this particular instance, let's say we've thrown her, and we go for another throw. That's not ideal, because that resets neutral. So if we suspect that Cammy is going to go for a throw after a knockdown, say we've thrown her 3 or 4 times in a row, we're fairly confident that if we go for a 5th throw, that they will try attack. That's where we can do the shimmy. The shimmy is where you walk back out of range and they leave themselves exposed. Like so. Cammy is vulnerable to being attacked there when she wakes up because she went for a throw. So there are multiple ways you can punish this, and it really just comes down to how you prefer to punish a throw. You can punish a throw with another throw, for example. You can just walk back in afterwards. Do it again. That's one way I do it. Another thing you can do is walk back and do a crouching meme into your fireball choice. There are plenty of other options for shimmies aside from what I've just shown you, but this is just here to expand your mind and give you a few more options in terms of what you can do in the throw mix-up game. So, in summary, this is how powerful throws are in Street Fighter V. They're not a tool just for getting damage. They're a tool for mixing up your opponents and keeping them guessing and getting them frustrated into making mistakes and exposing themselves for more damage. Because at the end of the day, you don't want them blocking, you want them pressing buttons, and that's where we're going to get them with these throws. So that said, hope you enjoyed. Kisses, hugs, belly rubs. I'll be back with another episode very soon.